Welcome to American Indian and Alaska Native Living, a program designed to educate and inspire listeners throughout Indian country. American Indian and Alaska Native Living is hosted by Dr. David DeRose, a board-certified specialist in both internal medicine and preventive medicine. Dr. DeRose has a wide range of experience with Native health issues, and he is here today to help you learn more about your health. Here is Dr. DeRose.
Welcome to American Indian and Alaska Native Living. I'm Dr. David DeRose. We continue a series of broadcasts that are being recorded in the Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. We're talking with people from throughout the world who are making a difference, especially in the areas of health and education. At least that's the emphasis for our show. Across from me is someone who is not a stranger if you're a regular listener to our program. His name is Vaughn Sparrow. Vaughn, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Vaughn, I know you have impacted a lot of people, and the institution you're associated with has. It's impacted me. When I was a medical student, I spent a couple of months at a place called, I think then they called it Wildwood Institute or Wildwood Sanitarium and Hospital.
Right.
And what is the name of the organization you represent today?
So currently we do business as Wildwood Health Institute.
Okay, Wildwood Health Institute. And geographically, if someone is hearing about Wildwood for the first time, where are you actually located?
Okay, so we're in the southeast. Chattanooga, Tennessee is about 15 minutes from our campus. We in Georgia, Wildwood, Georgia.
Okay, so if I were to fly into Chattanooga, I could catch a ride, 15, 20 minutes, just slip over the border of Tennessee into Georgia,
Right.
and I'm at your doorstep.
Yes, exit 169.
Okay, so your role there, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at this point.
So I fill a role in administration, currently the president of Wildwood Health Institute. I've been at Wildwood for almost 20 years.
Wow.
Been serving as president for 13.
So you've got this long history at Wildwood, but Wildwood's got a whole lot longer history than you or I. How long has the institution been there?
Wildwood was started in 1942. That makes us 82 years. And it's an amazing testimony to God's leading and guidance over the years.
It's really an amazing story. So today, there's a whole college, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. You know, it's quite in vogue in many circles. A lot of scientific research supporting lifestyle and its power when it comes to disease. But this has really been what Wildwood's vision was for over 80 years. Is that right?
Right. Correct.
So you're in administration, but for those who are listening today, give us a little perspective on why, as you sit in an administrative role, you do what you do. Why does this resonate with you?
Well, as I've studied and I've been in the institution for many years now, but probably over the last 5 years, I was asked to do a presentation on why we do health work. What is the need for sanitariums? Sanitarium's kind of a strange word today, not used that often, but in the counsels that we've received over the years, the Lord had a special work for the end time work here right before the second coming of Jesus, and a work of healing to be done in such a way that it would protect those that work in the institution as well as those that are seeking healing to come to an institution where there's not a laying on of hands per se and you healed like Jesus healed in Bible times. Because of the increased impact of Satan in the affairs of men and his spurious works of healing, in other words, making people sick and then removing what was put on them, God in his foresight shared a way that would protect the end time work from, this false type of healing. And that work is the work that we do. And as I've studied into it more and more, I become impressed each time of the high and holy calling that God has called us to, giving us a special opportunity to touch people's lives in such a way that it resonates with them because they haven't been touched in a way that is appropriate for many years.
Your story is fascinating, and Wildwood's story is fascinating. Folks that are listening, many of them, they say, hey, I can relate to this. I understand what this guy's talking about. Others may be coming from a very different perspective. They may not be coming from a Christian perspective. And hearing someone talking about, end times and, talking about Jesus and Satan, and this is just strange language. You've been sharing your own vision, and as I've worked with people there at Wildwood over the years, I know it's a very spiritually focused institution, but what really struck me is I was actually on staff there after I was a medical student and spent a couple of months there, ended up doing my residency in internal medicine, and then came back and worked at Wildwood for about a year and a half. I was just impressed with the range of people that you serve. When people hear about people having a Christian mission for healing or want to follow Jesus' ministry, they think, well, there's going to be a religious place and, there's going to be, kind of weird spiritual things going on. But at least when I was there, anything that was distinctly spiritual was optional. You had a chapel there. If people wanted to come there for a spiritual program, they could. But what you're doing there for the patients, the guests, you're doing, health lectures. You're teaching them cooking classes. Is it still the same way?
Still the same. We are religious. We will pray with you. But anything else is your choice. And we've had people from all walks of life. And people maybe from even an atheist background have come there and been touched in such a way that they leave blessed and say, the effect that this place has had on me showed me something that I haven't seen before. And they leave satisfied, they leave touched, they leave blessed. And we are still a place where we see miracles happen every day. And miracles each and every program. We have a number of programs that we run. People can come in for 7, 10, 25 days. And each time, people leave from there saying, thank you so much, because I feel so much better and I'm ready to face life again.
So tell us a miracle story. Someone who comes to mind who's recently walked through the doors of Wildwood and had an experience that really was just beyond anything they could expect.
One of the stories that is really had a high impact on the institution has been told is a story of one of our staff, actually. She got diagnosed, I believe it was endometrial cancer.
Whoa.
And eventually surgery was recommended. She went in for the surgery, and the surgery was done, and she was given basically 6 months to live.
Wow. So they couldn't get it all surgically. Okay.
They couldn't get it all. And she was told that she'd have to go for chemo and radiology and all of these treatments for cancer today. And she decided that she was just going to leave this in the Lord's hands and follow a natural regimen in dealing with this disease factor in her body.
One thing I'll comment as a physician, I'm feeling comfortable with this story. I sometimes hear stories like this that I'm uncomfortable with. The ones I'm uncomfortable with is when someone has like a highly treatable cancer and they forego standard treatments that we know are highly successful to do something that, to me, I don't judge them. If they say God or the Creator told them to do something different, but that, as far as a physician, I get much more worried than if someone says, hey, the doctors have done all they could do. Yeah, we can give you some chemotherapy and radiation, but you're going to die. You might give you an extra 6 months. I'm hearing this type of story. Am I getting it right?
Correct.
And so she decides 6 months, 12 months, why won't I do the radiation, the chemotherapy? I'm going to trust God and do what I can. Part of doing what she could, was that coming to Wildwood?
She was working at Wildwood, so she was there.
Oh, she was working at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was there, and she decided to follow what we teach.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. She started a very strict routine regimen. She used some of the natural remedies, hydrotherapy. She was on a total plant-based diet, watched her diet very strictly, exercise, walking, going to bed on time, very important, rest. And 6 months later, she went to visit the surgeon because he wanted to do a checkup on her. When she walked in, everybody was shocked.
That she was still alive?
That she was still alive.
Okay.
And she looked the picture of health.
Whoa.
There's not many people that walk into a surgeon's office and have been on the traditional medical program that have that picture of health.
No, especially when they're in end-stage cancer, so to speak, right?
Right, yes. And so the receptionist, the nurses, who is this? She walked into the surgeon's office and he couldn't believe his eyes. And he said to her, you know, I never got all of your cancer. I couldn't. I never thought I would see you here. And it is now probably close to 10 years later.
Wow.
She didn't think she would see the birth of her grandchild. She's seen the birth of a number of grandchildren. And today is still healthy, still working at Wildwood. And the Lord has blessed fantastically in her experience.
That's an amazing story. And I know, like you said, not everyone has a terminal diagnosis, but some people, they're dealing with their diabetes or their high blood pressure. Maybe they've had a, quote, small stroke or a, quote, small heart attack.
Yeah.
Sometimes those things, if we knew what the future held, it may only be 6 months for them unless they change their lifestyle.
Correct.
Tell me about the kind of day-to-day things that you see a lot of. I know we used to see a lot of diabetes, a lot of high blood pressure, heart disease. Still the same?
Yeah. We still see those same things. We've actually tried to specialize, and I put that in inverted commas, in diabetes because there's a high success rate with what we do in diabetes type 2 especially, right? But we see all of the rest, and there's so many stories. We see people that have been diagnosed with a whole string of diseases and have come overweight. Doctors kind of given up on them and have walked away with many of those disease factors that have been brought under control and many times reversed as well.
Tremendous. So folks who are tuning into this segment, they're hearing about Wildwood perhaps for the 15th time or maybe just the first time, but I find a lot of people don't know how to track you guys down. What's the best way to connect with you and your team? wildwoodhealth.org on our webpage. Otherwise, you can call in at 706-820-1493. Okay. That went by pretty quick, especially if someone is hearing it for the first time.
Yep.
So it's wildwoodhealth.org.
.org.
And then give us that phone number again.
706-820-1493. And ask to speak to our guest services department.
Okay, guest services at Wildwood Health. Now, before we slip away for a break, you not only help people who have health challenges, you're training people to go back to their communities, their villages, their tribes, their workplace, their family, and make a difference. Can you stay by in our next segment and talk about some of the training programs you're offering?
We'll do that.
Okay. I'm talking with Vaughn Sparrow. Vaughn is the president of an amazing institution for over 80 years. Wildwood, not Vaughn in that position, but Wildwood has been serving people, helping them connect with natural therapies. Wildwoodhealth.org is the website. 706-820-1493. We'll be right back after these important messages.
Today's broadcast has been pre-recorded. However, if you have questions about today's show or would like further information, please reach out to us on the web at AIANL.org. That stands for American Indian Alaska Native Living. Again, AIANL.org. Or you can call us at 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673. We'll be right back after this.
We are strong, we are resilient, and we will get through this together. But these are stressful times, and it's important to also practice good self-care. It's normal to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or afraid. But there is hope. Reach out to someone. Connect with your friends. Stay in touch with your community. And know that you are not alone. Learn more at wearebroadcasters.com/hope. Furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
When Jim died, I wondered if I would be able to keep the farm. Then I heard about the USDA's loan program for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. It's for women and minorities who may be having trouble getting credit. Once I was approved, the USDA's Farm Service Agency helped me get the credit I needed. Now I don't have to sell, and I can pass the farm down to my kids the way Jim's dad passed it down to him. I know he'd like that.
Contact your local USDA Service Center or visit www.fsa.usda.gov.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
You're listening to Dr. David DeRose on American Indian and Alaska Native Living. Your comments and questions are welcome. Call now at 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673. Here again is Dr. DeRose.
Welcome back to American Indian and Alaska Native Living. I'm Dr. David DeRose. With me, Vaughn Sparrow, the president of Wildwood Health Institute. We are talking about some of the amazing things that have happened on the grounds of Wildwood. We were speaking in the first segment about some of the remarkable stories of people who've come there with health conditions. But you as an institution haven't been content just helping individuals. Part of your vision is to train people. Can you tell us a little bit about why you do that?
So this relationship between the Health Institute or Lifestyle Center / medical work treating people's diseases has another aspect to it, and that's training people to be able to help people where they are. And so we have a training school. We call it a medical missionary training school that we have a number of different courses. People can come in for our baseline course, which is 6 months, and get trained in nutrition, disease, treatment of disease, also in Bible-related topics. And after 6 months, they can go from there being trained in natural remedies as well, hydrotherapy, massage, to help bring relief to people with a whole range of different ailments that we suffer from the lifestyles that we are caught up in.
So I know this program has been valued by people throughout the world. I've been not only staff there at Wildwood, I've been back there to lecture. We've had the privilege of working with you guys in some of your seminars. And when I've been there, I mean, there's people from all over the world literally there going through your programs. Mm-hmm. My understanding is a lot of these people go back to places where there may not be any health professionals, right, and they may have some of the most health training in that area, and they're having a considerable impact. Can you tell us about maybe some stories like that?
Let me back up a little bit and say this. Our students have the privilege and the opportunity halfway through the semester to do a national mission trip where they go and reach people in continental U.S.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of their training, after they have completed it, we take our students on an international trip. Some of those recently have been to Madagascar, the third poorest country in the world.
Wow.
And being able to share the knowledge that they've learned in the class and now take that and train others so that we extend those hands into their local communities, because we're only going to be there for 1 month. When we leave, we want to leave someone or people in the local community that have a similar training to what they have had in the past 6 months. And so there's huge impacts that are made in local communities. Another one, we were privileged to get on a boat and go up the Amazon River into the remote regions on the Amazon River and help people in villages on the river there, bringing relief, bringing help, bringing education.
I love what you guys are doing. It's not just training people. It's not just helping people at your facility. Like you mentioned, here in the U.S., I remember doing something in Indian country some years ago, and I was invited to give some health lectures in a tribal setting. And as I'm working with folks, I'm talking with some, and they had connections to Wildwood. I forget whether they were trained there or their parents worked there or something. So you've had this huge influence, and people hear about these natural remedies. We mention oftentimes hydrotherapy or water therapy. And sometimes people today, they hear that, they haven't seen that in the medical clinics. Give us an example of a hydrotherapy treatment that you've seen make a difference in people's lives.
So one of the most simple ones is the hot foot bath. Somebody's seated on a chair, has a headache or high blood pressure. You have a bowl of hot water that they put their feet in, making sure that they can tolerate it and it's not going to burn them. Put a cold cloth on their head, and what happens with that hot water is it draws the blood from the head down to the feet where they're getting hotter than the rest of the body, and brings relief to that headache, brings relief to that high blood pressure. And this just is one of the most simple ones that anybody can really help someone with. And people are amazed that, oh, my headache is gone after just a short time. And it grows from there, gets more complicated, and you need training to do them. But when I was young, which is a few years ago, my mother, when I had a stomach ache, would put a cold rag on my stomach. When I had a headache, it would be a cold cloth on my forehead. And many times today, that's been forgotten. And we just teach people, remind people, these are the simple things that we've been given that we can implement in our lives so that we can bring relief to others.
I've been inspired by how hydrotherapy has been a part of Native culture for centuries. And hearing from different tribes, their stories. I remember hearing a story from one of the eastern tribes talking about how they would do a sweating treatment and then go out into the cold, much like you'd think the saunas that are done in Finland. So there's this long tradition, but I appreciated your emphasis on safety, because that's one of the things I always get worried about. You mentioned that hot foot bath, making sure that it's not too hot, that a person can tolerate it. The rule of thumb we always use with that is if a person's got neuropathy, nerve problems from their diabetes or something else, get a thermometer, never above 104 Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius. So I know you're training people in those practical things and in those skills. If someone wants to learn more about the training opportunities at Wildwood, how would they go about doing that?
You could go to the same webpage. There is a different one, healthevangelism.org, and you could find our training program there.
Okay, healthevangelism.org, right?
Yes.
Now, if all they remember is one website, what's the best one?
Wildwoodhealth.org.
Okay, wildwoodhealth.org. Now, let me just come back to this, because we've been talking about this range of things that you guys do at Wildwood. And I guess for me, as a physician, just give you a practical example. So we do a lot of online things. Here at this venue, someone came by. They said, oh, I see your 30 Days to Better Health program. I signed up for that. And they were telling me they have very high blood sugars. We've had great results with that program, people controlling their blood sugar, their blood pressure. But this person told me a common story. Well, I signed up for it. I started it, but I didn't finish it. Now to another person. They reached out to me and they said, hey, I heard about your program, but there's another program, yours is free. This one's, $600, $700. And basically I said, well, you get the same results with a less expensive program, but honestly, sometimes it's what you put into it, what you invest in it. So we don't say that everyone's got to come to Wildwood. There's great tribal programs that are making an impact on diabetes, but a lot of people in their local setting, their local environment, it's just overwhelming. Tell us why a reset can help someone. Because someone thinks, well, so I go to, northern Georgia, yeah, maybe my diabetes will be under great control, but I got to go back to the same environment. What is it that happens in a couple of weeks or less sometimes that you've seen this change a whole person's life? Help us to understand that.
So many times we get so caught up in our little, shall we call it microcosm, or shall we just put it in practical terms, the mouse running on the wheel, right? And we're driven by all kinds of stresses in life, which includes family, includes the workplace or not workplace, and includes the environment that we live in. And all of those stress factors pressing in on us, we need to get away from. And a lot of times people also struggle with, and like you've mentioned, is I didn't complete it. And the reason that they didn't complete it is that they were interrupted by one of those many stresses that I've just mentioned, whether it's family, work, whatever it is. And when you come away to a place where there's people that'll help you through a program that'll encourage you, that'll pray for you, that'll keep you moving to the completion of this reset, it helps so many people. There are few that have the willpower. I'm going to do this, and they can carry it through. But most can't. And I often will tell people, you need to be selfish during your time with us. We even recommend that you don't take too many calls from family unless they're emergency. Right? You just need time to connect with yourself, to connect with God, to connect with nature. And let us help you with that process as you work through it, giving you the simple remedies to add to those connections so that as you go through this program, you get to the end and you'll leave ready to face the challenges back home. We also encourage you how to take it home. We don't just run you all the way to the end of the program and say bye. We give you recommendations, programs. We even have what we call the next step program, a follow-up program that we will connect with you a month after you go home to encourage you, help make sure that you're still sticking to the plan.
Excellent.
And that you can follow it through. And we'll keep up with that for as long as you need it, right, to keep going in the right direction.
I love how the program works because it's not like you're telling people how to eat differently. I mean, that's what I do in my seminars, but you're feeding them the foods that are optimal for their condition. And then while they're there, you're training them how to prepare those foods, right?
Exactly.
Vaughn, so appreciate what you guys are doing at Wildwood. Thanks for pulling away and joining us. One more time before we have to leave, how does someone reach out to your organization, learn about your training programs, learn how they can come through one of your inpatient programs?
On the webpage, wildwoodhealth.org. Telephonically, 706-820-1493.
Vaughn, thank you again for your help. We're going to be back with more today's edition of American Indian and Alaska Native Living. Don't go away. We've got another great guest who's going to be joining us for the second half of today's show.
American Indian and Alaska Native Living will continue in a moment. If you have questions or comments about today's pre-recorded broadcast, please contact us on the web at aianl.org or call 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673.
A message from the National Police Association. It used to be that any able-bodied person would offer to assist a police officer in danger. Now, passers-by are more likely to take a video. There's a better use for your phone when an officer's in trouble. Call 911. Tell the operator where you are and what you see. Then, start your video to provide evidence later. To learn more about how you can assist law enforcement, visit nationalpolice.org. That's nationalpolice.org.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
Using meth taught me everything about freedom, only not like you think. It taught me how easy it is to lose your freedom. If you think meth is taking control of you, ask for help. You have the power to be truly free. I know. I'm Jan, and I'm free from meth.
If you or someone you know is struggling with meth, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential treatment referral. Learn more at samhsa.gov/meth.
You're listening to Dr. David DeRose on American Indian and Alaska Native Living. Your comments and questions are welcome. Call now at 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673. Here again is Dr. DeRose.
Welcome back to American Indian and Alaska Native Living. I'm Dr. David DeRose. We continue to record some programming here in Orlando, Florida. Those of you that are regular listeners realize I'm not at full capacity as far as my voice, but we've been conducting some great interviews. I'm glad that I'm not the main one doing the talking. That continues in this segment as I'm sitting across from Dr. Wes Youngberg here in the exhibit hall in Orlando, Florida. Wes, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Dave.
Wes, you have been well known in natural healing circles, lifestyle medicine circles for many, many years, despite your youthful appearance. And you've been making a big impact. I know years ago I heard about the great work you were doing with diabetes reversal on the island of Guam.
Right.
And more recently, I've heard of people traveling out to your clinic there in Southern California to get special help with the area of dementia.
Right.
We don't talk enough about that. It's a growing problem in Indian country and beyond.
Everywhere.
Help us understand what's going on. Why does there seem to be such a problem with dementia today?
Well, I first picked up on this while being a medical missionary in the island of Guam. We have a condition there called litical bodig, which is a local named condition that it's a combination of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. So talk about a bad combination of neurologic diseases. And there's been all kinds of theories of what's causing that. But so I started to get interested in neurologic health because of that. While on Guam, I was really focusing, of course, I focus on the people that come see me, which is largely a diabetic population or cardiovascular health or digestive health issues. But in 2014, I read an article in the journal Alzheimer's and Parkinsonisms that really kind of startled me. And it was 10 case studies presented by Dr. Dale Bredesen that showed that they were reversing early Alzheimer's and a mild cognitive impairment. So these were cases that it just wasn't a randomized study. It was just cases where people clearly showed reversal. And he pointed out then that if you address enough of the underlying triggers, and he used an analogy, David, that he says, what if you were in a building, a warehouse that had 30 holes in the ceiling?
Wow.
And there was a storm like we had yesterday that was a massive thunderstorm. Would it be safe to have booths in the building? No, it wouldn't be safe at all. Well, what if you fixed like 3 of those holes? Would you be okay then?
17 still remaining.
Yeah. So So the bottom line is that the problem with dementia in general, and of course Alzheimer's is the biggest form of dementia in terms of a number of patients who have it. Roughly 80% of all dementia is in the form of Alzheimer's disease. So some people say, I have dementia, but I'm glad I don't have Alzheimer's. I says, well, if you have dementia, you probably want Alzheimer's disease because that's number one, is an easier one to address compared to Lewy body disease or frontal temporal dementia, etc. Other forms of dementia are actually harder to address, with the exception maybe of vascular dementia, which just means we know that there's vascular occlusion problems that are leading to the dementia, which is typical in Alzheimer's as well. So reading that article, I learned that the most common driver of dementia was insulin resistance of the brain.
No way.
And I saw, well, of course, being more of a subspecialist in diabetes and prediabetes, and of course what we call insulin resistance, as you well know, you're one of those subspecialists. I became very intrigued by that because I've always said if you treat somebody's diabetes, you're really treating every condition that they have. You're improving their lives in a dramatic way. You're decreasing the risk of cancer, of heart disease, of stroke, of pretty much every disease. And I used to say a neurologic disease too, kind of on the side. But in reality, what would you be more concerned about? Having heart disease or dementia, right? And so they're all bad.
Right.
And so if you treat diabetes effectively, you're actually addressing all those conditions at the same time. Well, now I'm focusing when we deal with dementia, if you address that properly through a comprehensive assessment, evaluation, lab testing, etc., and fix as many of the underlying triggers or risk factors as possible, the more you fix, the closer you're getting to actually crossing a tipping point where you're actually dramatically improving that person's future risk relative to dementia. So the first thing that we want to do is slow it down. And then we believe we can do that 100% of the time. So the more of the risk factors that we assess and find, okay, here's something that can be optimized further, let's optimize it. Let's find another thing that can be optimized. Let's fix that. And the more of that we fix, the more likely we are to really significantly slow the progression down.
Okay, here's the big question.
Yeah.
I mean, people are listening. Okay, a lot of folks know you in Indian country from your Diabetes Undone series, so you're not a strange name. Folks have confidence because you've helped them with their diabetes, whether it's in person or virtually. But now we're talking about dementia. You read this study with 10 people. I mean, intriguing, but I think a lot of folks are already asking, what did you find? When you start applying these things, are people getting better that you're seeing?
Absolutely. In fact, the second goal is to stop the progression. The third goal is to actually begin to show improvements in different aspects of cognitive function.
Okay.
So ultimately, it's about improving functionality. That's the key.
Right.
We're maintaining functionality and improving functionality. Ultimately, that's the most important thing in life and quality of life, is how functional are you? How able are you to be relatively independent, right? So, so then I actually participated in Dr. Bredesen's next paper, which was 100 patients. I actually submitted 14 patients that I, during that time, I had clearly seen reversal of dementia, improvement in function, and improvement in many of the underlying indicators, the triggers that contribute to neurotoxicity in the brain. For instance, one simple example that's well known in both the lifestyle medicine community and the functional medicine community is addressing homocysteine, the amino acid protein, if you will, that as it builds up in the bloodstream above its normal healthy level of roughly 6 to 8, as it goes above that, it becomes neurotoxic. So that homocysteine amino acid in the bloodstream actually is toxic to the neurons, to the memory neurons in the brain. And it's also cardiotoxic. That's what's more commonly known for its cardiotoxicity at higher levels. And so by treating that naturally and bringing that, it's mainly using various B vitamins, vitamin B12, folate or vitamin B9, vitamin B6, etc., trimethylglycine. These nutrients help break that down naturally in the body into cysteine or methionine, and so now you don't have much homocysteine. Well, so that's one of the key simple, we call it a simple remedy, if you will, that everybody can take advantage of nowadays if they have an elevated homocysteine or even just a low B12 level. All that all by itself increases neurodegenerative risk in the brain. So that's an example of one of the simple things we can do.
So it sounds like, from what I understand about your protocol and Dr. Bredesen's protocol, is you guys look at a broad range of things.
Very
pretty
broad.
Comprehensive laboratory testing and other things. Is that right?
Yeah, so he talks about having, a room with 30 holes in the ceiling, and so we got to fix as many of those holes as possible. So I actually look at over 100 different indicators, and if they're good already, then we just check them off and move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
But many people have dozens and dozens of risk factors that are actually in the yellow or red line areas that could benefit from tweaking those. So we optimize, not just normalize, but optimize as many things. Of course, in the field of diabetes or pre-diabetes, we understand optimum versus normal.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, it's almost normal the older you get to have diabetes. One third of people who are 70 or 75 or older already have diabetes, and so that's kind of like expected. That's average. But in pre-diabetes, we're talking about a huge number. The majority of adults after age 40 already have pre-diabetes, and so we want to not normalize but optimize, get that A1C not at just 5.7, 5.8, or under 6.5, which is the beginning of diabetes, but to actually get it down well under 5.7. Ideally, without using insulin or medications, it would be ideal to get it down to 5.2, 5.1, which can be done. And by the way, it doesn't matter on age. I just went to a memorial service for Tom Zapara, who reversed his diabetes at age 89.
Wow.
And he did it in 5 weeks. He was the one that commissioned my book, Goodbye Diabetes.
Really? I did not know that history.
Yeah, he harassed my publisher, Dan Houghton, for 5 years, who harassed me for 5 years, and we finally got it written, and he got the first copy of the book, and he said, I want to get tested. So we tested him with everything. His blood sugars after that glucola drink were over 300.
Wow. So did the glucose tolerance test?
Yeah, we did that, and that's what convinced him he needed to do something.
So this was before his program.
So yeah, that's right. And so within 5 weeks of walking after meals, changing his diet, doing the fundamentals that are well addressed not only in the book but also in the program, Diabetes Undone, he called me up and says, Wes, I want to get checked again. I go, it's been 5 weeks, Tom. And he says, I know, but it's my 90th birthday next week, and I want to tell him where I'm at. Okay, and over 11 years later, I attended his memorial service when he was 101. So Tom was able to get his hemoglobin A1C down from 7.2 to actually 5.7 in 5 weeks. Actually, no, 6.2. So he was still pre-diabetic at that time, but when another 6 months, he brought it down to 5.2. And for the next 10 years, Dr. DeRose, he was able to maintain that by just following the protocol. He walked with his wife 1.8 miles around his gated community in Laguna Beach. And I'd have people calling me up, says, this 90-year-old couple's walking around the gated community every morning. They loved it. They were the talk of the town. And so if they can do the exercise after meals, right?
Well, there you go.
Okay, if they can change their diet, anybody can. So I always, when somebody says, I'm too old, I'm too old. I said, nobody's too old.
I love the message. Diabetes, brain health, they're interrelated, but there's a whole lot more on the equation. We've got another segment coming up. Dr. Wes Youngberg, founder of Diabetes Undone, made a huge impact in Indian country. He's now making a huge impact when it comes to mental health and dementia. Stay tuned. We've got a final segment with Dr. Youngberg. I'm Dr. DeRose. We'll be right back after this.
Today's broadcast has been pre-recorded. However, if you have questions about today's show or would like further information, please call 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673. We'll be right back after this.
Timeless Healing Insights is here for you and for your whole person health. With that in mind, we invite you to go to our website, www.timelesshealinginsights.org. There you will find a free 30-day lifestyle program. Sign up for it and you'll get daily email reminders for 30 days, links to short videos to give you pointers on a healthier lifestyle. On our website, you can also find information about this broadcast. You can connect with our handouts. You can review archives from episodes of Timeless Healing Insights TV that you have missed. Continued success to you. I'll see you at timelesshealinginsights.org.
If a natural disaster comes knocking, how prepared is your family? You can't just close the door on earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes and hope they go away. That's why it's important to make a plan now. Ready.gov/plan has the tools and tips you need to prepare your family for an emergency. So if disaster shows up at your doorstep, you'll be ready. Visit ready.gov/plan and make a plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
I'm just texting him back. I'm just posting a story. I'm just changing the song.
No. When it comes to distracted driving, just don't. Sending a text takes your eyes off the road for just 5 seconds, but in that time, your car can travel the length of an entire football field. Any distracted driving just isn't worth it.
Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
What is a number story?
My number story started with fear and a lack of support, and it has led me to be there for others.
A number story begins in our childhood with ACEs, adverse childhood experiences.
My number story begins with the separation from my father and the emotional abandonment from my mother, and leads to me being a role model to not only myself, but those around me by becoming the person that wasn't there for me.
ACEs are so common, 2/3 of us have one.
My number story begins with drug abuse and homelessness, and leads to realizing that I can live life by my own standards.
A study found the more ACEs, the more likely we may experience a host of serious health effects, physical and mental, but that doesn't need to be the case. Your ACE number is simply an entry point to your own story. Where it leads is up to you.
My number story begins with years of emotional abuse and leads to peace, clarity, and security in my self-worth.
Take control of where your number story leads at numberstory.org.
You're listening to Dr. David DeRose on American Indian and Alaska Native Living. Your comments and questions are welcome. Call now at 1-800-775-HOPE. That's 1-800-775-4673. Here again is Dr. DeRose.
Welcome back to American Indian and Alaska Native Living. I'm Dr. David DeRose with Dr. Wes Youngberg across from me here in the exhibit hall in Orlando, Florida. Dr. Youngberg, again, familiar name to many people throughout Indian country. A lot of my friends in Oklahoma have told me a lot of tribal members out there got very excited about Diabetes Undone. I've heard a number of community groups running the program there. Of course, it's been used nationwide and beyond the U.S., but Wes, now focusing our attention, at least in this show, on dementia. Someone's listening. They've got a loved one who's struggling cognitively. They hear what you're doing. How do you recommend they connect with you and the kind of work you're doing?
Well, the first thing is years ago, my father encouraged me to write a little book called Memory Makeover, How to Prevent Alzheimer's and Reverse Cognitive Decline. And it was a book that I wrote mainly based, it's a case study book. It was mainly on a patient, a couple that I was seeing, who was working with a neurologist, Dr. Khan, who was a classmate really at Loma Linda University, and he had attended a lecture that I gave at a national convention on Alzheimer's, and he recommended that they see me, mainly because he didn't have anything else for them conventionally.
Fair enough.
She had had Alzheimer's already for 15 years.
15 years?
15, yeah, and she'd had advanced Alzheimer's for 5 years. So I was concerned about the referral, frankly, doctor.
So give us a picture. What is this person with advanced Alzheimer's? What do they look like? Did they walk in? Did they talk with you?
They basically they couldn't communicate at all. They were more in a vegetative state.
Wow.
She would basically just sit there and kind of drool. But her husband loved her, and did not want to put her in hospice. So the conventional wisdom was you really need to put her in hospice because he was not only the main caregiver, he was the only caregiver. So he was destroying his health, trying to keep her healthy. And so they were concerned about him, but he resisted putting her in hospice. Says, isn't there anything else they can do? So the neurologist said, well, I did hear a lecture that was interesting, but it's beyond what I do. And so he referred him to me. And it was all done by phone. I usually do a lot of Zoom so they can kind of see what I'm doing, but he didn't even have the technology to do Zoom. He didn't even have internet at home, so he would actually go into town so he could call me.
Amazing.
And we actually met once a month for over a year.
By phone?
By phone. And, to his credit, he did it all. I just showed him the way. But we did lab work there locally, and then I interpreted it for him, and we did multiple things. So we did a very comprehensive treatment plan for her. I was concerned because she had dementia for so long.
Right.
Her hippocampal volume, which is the size of the part of the brain responsible for converting short-term into long-term memory, was less than first percentile. So in other words...
So 99% of people had a larger hippocampus than her.
99% of people her age as an elderly woman had a larger hippocampus than she did.
Okay. Even for her age and everything. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really bad. So I wrote this book about her for family members of people that are asking that very question. Is it worth even doing anything? Is it too late?
So... You wrote the book. Obviously, she must have had some improvement.
Yeah, and she had what is commonly known as sundowning syndrome.
Tell us about that.
Where every evening, starting around 4:30 in the afternoon, she would start having hallucinations, and she'd start packing her suitcases, wanting to leave to go live with her mother, who'd been dead for over 30 years already. And so Jim, not his real name, her husband, would basically spend those 4 hours every evening keeping her from going out the front door with a suitcase. It was very disturbing for the family, and talk about, challenging for a husband to go through that. That had gone on for 3 years already.
Wow.
And so we started addressing the underlying triggers for sundowning syndrome and the anxiety associated with that, etc. Within 3 months' time, this is a great story. Within 3 months' time, her sundowning syndrome was 95% gone.
Tremendous.
So now he wasn't spending all that extra time and energy trying to deal with her on that level. And they were getting to bed on time. It was just, she was getting so much more sleep. And he was so excited. That alone was worth the entire program, right? Because that's a functionality question.
Right.
And she had got to the point where she couldn't even talk to her sister on the phone because she had no idea who her sister was, and really could not, even if she did, wasn't able to communicate effectively. Well, fast forward a year and a half into the program. Now, so her husband's finding a way to get her to exercise. So there's fundamentals, and then there's natural remedies. Some of the key irreplaceable type of fundamentals are diet, exercise, and sleep. So we have to address those effectively clinically, or else we're not really going to get the results that we're hoping for, even if we follow a lot of the other simple remedies or other natural remedies. They all have an impact because they're fixing different parts of the factors that drive risk. Like if you're sitting on a tack, it's going to take a lot of aspirin to make you feel better. You got to get rid of the tack. Well, if you're sitting on 2 tacks, removing just one of them doesn't make you 50% better. If you're sitting on 10 of them, you got to get rid of all of them to feel good, to get to that tipping point, right? Okay. So we made sure that she was on the right diet. She didn't want to exercise, so he made sure he fed her the right diet. This was all what he was going to do. She was basically in a vegetative state. She had no ability on her own to do anything, to fix anything, to make any really good positive choices. So she started getting the right diet. She started attempting to do the sleep and rest portion properly. And then she didn't want to exercise. So he, within his wisdom, discovered that if he said, honey, you want to go for a walk around the neighborhood, she didn't want to do that. If he said, honey, would you like to go shopping? You know, she picked up on that. Even though she couldn't communicate, she picked up on it, would go with him shopping. So they'd go window shopping around and walk around the mall. And that's how she got her exercise. So little by little, she got to the point where she realized she felt better with exercise after every meal and other times, to the point where she actually wanted to go walking even around the neighborhood. So those were the fundamentals. And then we fixed a lot of other things based on lab work, etc. And so fast forward a year and a half, or even 6 months, I'm talking to Jim on the phone, and he says, yesterday was an amazing breakthrough. I says, what happened? He says, I was driving along to the store, and she said, oh, you missed a turn. And he goes like, oh, yeah, I was so focused on what I was going to do later that I missed my turn. So he said, you missed the turn. He says, whereas previously she had no spatial awareness at all. She had no idea what time it was. She couldn't look at a clock and say it's this time. She was basically in a vegetative state. But as she was driving, previously she had no idea where she was. But now she could remember where she was.
Wow.
And that's a huge benefit cognitively when you know that one of the first things that goes with Alzheimer's is that somebody's driving home and they're like, they get lost driving home or to work. Right?
Yeah.
And so for that to reverse was a huge thing in his mind that, wow, she really is getting better. So we're not just slowing this down. We're not just stopping it. We're actually improving cognitive function.
Definitely.
A year and a half into the program, she drives to Atlanta, a 4-hour drive.
She drove herself.
No. Her husband drove. Okay, but they're going to Atlanta to visit her sister. When she drives up into the driveway, she sees her sister. She calls out her name and runs to her, and they embrace, and they spend hours talking about their childhood, which hadn't happened in 10 years.
Amazing.
Okay, so in other words, the book, Memory Makeover, it's a little book. You can read it in a day. It shows you what is possible, okay, in any individual.
We got to learn how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of the book if we want it, Memory Makeover. And if someone wants to see you or access some of your programming, you got all kinds of stuff online, right?
Right.
Tell us how we do it.
The Memory Makeover is available at certain ABC stores, but its easiest way to get it is just go on our website, DrYoungberg, that's YOUNGBERG.com. Just my name, dryoungberg.com.
Okay.
And you can go to the store and you can purchase the book there. There's another, on the website, there's a program tab on the homepage that includes what's called Reignite Recognition. It's a 15-hour series designed for families and individuals who are struggling with some level of early or even more significant dementia that can actually walk them through a comprehensive program. And that is actually available much like the Diabetes Undone program that can be run in a church. In fact, we're going to be running that very same program at our church in Fallbrook, California, coming up here pretty soon. And many other churches are doing that as well.
That's tremendous. So any community group could run this program?
That's right. And all they got to do is just give us a call, or they can actually order the program, which is an online program, through our website.
That's wonderful.
DrYoungberg.com.
DR for doctor, no period.
Correct.
Youngberg.
Right.
.com.
That's it.
People can arrange for a personal appointment with you too?
That's right. And people don't have to actually come see me. We can focus on Zoom sessions, which I do with many people around the country. So all the contact information is right there.
Wes, amazing stuff. You got me excited. Hopefully a lot of folks are going to tune in, check out some of the resources you have. Thanks for all you're doing for diabetes, dementia, and just taking time out of your schedule to join us today.
Pleasure being on with you.
To each of you, my listeners, thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. David DeRose, as always, wishing you the very best of health.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.